Seven Deadly Innocent Frauds of Economic Policy. Foreword. Warren Mosler is a rare bird, a self-taught economist who is not a crank, a successful investor who is not a blowhard, a business person with a talent for teaching, a financier with a true commitment to the public good. We have co-authored testimony and the occasional article, and I attest firmly that his contributions to those efforts exceeded mine. Many economists value complexity for its own sake. A glance at any modern economics journal confirms this. A truly incomprehensible argument can bring a lot of prestige. The problem, though, is that when an argument appears incomprehensible, that often means the person making it doesn't understand it either. I was just at a meeting of European central bankers and international monetary economists in Helsinki, Finland. After one paper, I asked a very distinguished economist from Sweden how many people he thought had followed the math. He said, 0. Warren's gift is transparent lucidity. He thinks things through as simply as he can, and he puts a lot of work into this. True simplicity is hard. He favors the familiar metaphor and the homely example. You can explain his reasoning to most children, at least to mine, to any college student and to any player in the financial markets. Only economists, with their powerful loyalty to fixed ideas, have trouble with it. Politicians, of course, often do understand, but rarely feel free to speak their own minds. Now comes Warren Mosler with a small book, setting out his reasoning on 7 key issues. These relate to government, deficits, and debt, to the relation between public deficits and private savings, to that between savings and investment, to social security, and to the trade deficit. Warren calls them 7 deadly innocent frauds, taking up a phrase coined by my father as the title of his last book. Galbraith the Elder would have been pleased. The common thread tying these themes together is simplicity itself. It's that modern money is a spreadsheet. It works by computer. When government spends or lends, it does so by adding numbers to private bank accounts. When it taxes, it marks those same accounts down. When it borrows, it shifts funds from a demand deposit, called a reserve account, to savings, called a securities account. And that, for practical purposes, is all there is. The money government spends doesn't come from anywhere, and it doesn't cost anything to produce. The government, therefore, cannot run out. Money is created by government spending or by bank loans, which create deposits. Taxes serve to make us want that money. We need it in order to pay the taxes. And they help regulate total spending so that we don't have more total spending than we have goods available at current prices. Something that would force up prices and cause inflation. But taxes aren't needed in advance of spending, and could hardly be, since before the government spends, there is no money to tax. A government borrowing in its own currency need never default on its debts. Paying them is simply a matter of adding the interest to the bank accounts of the bondholders. A government can only decide to default, an act of financial suicide, or, in the case of a government borrowing in a currency it doesn't control, be forced to default by its bankers. But a U.S. bank will always cash a check issued by the U.S. government, whatever happens. Nor is the public debt a burden on the future. How could it be? Everything produced in the future will be consumed in the future. How much will be produced depends on how productive the economy is at that time. This has nothing to do with the public debt today. A higher public debt today does not reduce future production. And if it motivates wise use of resources today, it may increase the productivity of the economy in the future. Public deficits increase financial private savings. As a matter of accounting, dollar for dollar. Imports are a benefit, exports a cost. We do not borrow from China to finance our consumption. The borrowing that finances an import from China is done by a U.S. consumer at a U.S. bank. Social Security privatization would just reshuffle the ownership of stocks and bonds in the economy, transferring risky assets to seniors and safer ones to the wealthy, without having any other economic effects. The Federal Reserve sets interest rates where it wants. All these are among the simple principles set out in this small book. Also included here are an engaging account of the education of a financier and an action program for saving the American economy from the crisis of high unemployment. Warren would do this by suspending the payroll tax, giving every working American a raise of over 8% after tax, by a per capita grant to state and local governments to cure their fiscal crises, and by a public employment program offering a job at a modest wage to anyone who wanted one. This would eliminate the dangerous forms of unemployment and allow us to put our young people, especially, to useful work. Warren's heroes, among economists and apart from my father, are Win Godley and Abba Lerner. Godley, a wonderful man who just passed away, prefigured much of this work with his stock flow consistent macroeconomic models, which have proved to be among the best forecasting tools in the business. Lerner championed functional finance, meaning that public policy should be judged by its results in the real world, employment, productivity, and price stability, and not by whatever may be happening to budget and debt numbers. Warren also likes to invoke Lerner's law, the principle that, in economics, one should never compromise principles, no matter how much trouble other people have in understanding them. I wish I were as good at observing that principle as he is. All in all, this book is an engaging and highly instructive read. Highly recommended. James K. Galbraith, The University of Texas at Austin, June 12, 2010.